planning session, as they're calling it, starting tomorrow. They'll meet in the GTA for several days with trade tensions between Canada and the United States still unresolved. And now one of the Prime Minister's most vocal supporters says he's worried about the government's tariff response.
Do you know why I'm getting concerned, folks? I'm getting concerned. It's almost elbows down now. Everything's no, elbows up, fists up. We got to fight like hell, like we've never fought before, against President Trump, because he's coming. And we can't roll over. We have to still have that fight in us.
The Cabinet will also discuss the return of Parliament, the upcoming budget, and, of course, projects of national interest. But let's start with what the Premier of Ontario had to say as we bring in the power panel. Supriya Dwivedi was an advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We're standing by for Lisa Raitt to join us. She, of course, is a former Conservative Cabinet Minister. But Cheryl Oates is here. She was Director of Communications for former Alberta NDP Premier Rachel Notley. And Shachi Kurl is the President of the Angus Reid Institute. It's good to see you all, gang. It's been a minute. It's good to be back. So, Priya, let's start with what Doug Ford said there. There's been, I don't know if it's a fraying, but an unease in sort of the coalition around the Prime Minister. Doug Ford, Lana Payne with Unifor, frustrated with the lack of hitting back on tariffs. Is sign of warning, or what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a warning. I think if I were the government, it's clear that they've got a lot of work ahead of them. I don't think anybody really envies the monstrous to-do list that they've got. But you want to keep folks, particularly like the Lana Paynes, like the Doug Fords, in your corner on this. So whether that's, giving them a bit of a heads up, or, notice of a change in strategy, or if there's going to be any sort of, tinkering with the response than what was said earlier or prior, then you're going to want to do that so that they're not taken off guard and you don't have, the Premier there with an excellent clip for anybody that wants to hammer the government over the head with something, that the whole elbows down thing. I don't think that's the sort of message that the government would want to put out there. And if, they are trying to play this sort of waiting game to see if the Supreme Court of the United States weighs in on Trump's tariffs, which is, likely going to be the case, then, maybe you don't necessarily say that at a presser, but you can text your buddy, the Premier, Doug Ford, right, to let him know that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know if a Supreme Court decision even matters at this point, but we'll see, Cheryl. I mean, it could go that way. I mean, we did see, Lana Payne with Unifor, one of the biggest unions in the country, private sector for sure, was side by side with the Prime Minister in Kitchener and different places during the election, sort of moments of pretty strong support. Frustrated with the lack of retaliation, frustrated with the handling of the Air Canada strike, right, by sending it to arbitration right away, and now this from Ford. How do you view it?
I think that Ford is just a master opportunist who can change his political allegiances on a whim for whatever suits him on any given day. And if you are sitting on the other side of that as another party, it is so infuriating how good he is at it. But he is accountable to the people that elected him, just like union leaders are accountable to their membership, and they have to echo the sentiments of those who are supporting them on any given day. And that might not be falling in line with the Prime Minister. And I think we see that both from union leaders and from Doug Ford as well, is to say, we are feeling frustration from the people who elected us to say not enough is happening fast enough. Whether the strategy is right or not, politically, it's probably the right move for them.
Yeah, he poured out a bottle of Crown Royal today, too, Shachi, which 20-year-old David would have broken my heart. But what's your thoughts on this? I mean, there is the tangible fact that people are suffering economically from what the president is doing, and it is unresolved. And if you do whatever strategic reasons you make adjustments in your strategy, it will frustrate some people, like we're seeing with Doug Ford. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, offline, first of all, we need to elevate you to something other than Crown Royal. David.
I was 20. I was 20 years old. That was my point.
You said it out loud. And speaking of saying things out loud, I mean, Doug Ford is liked and respected not only in Ontario. I'm not saying he also infuriates. He infuriates Ontario voters frequently. But across the country, he has a reputation for being the guy who can often say the quiet part out loud. And what's...
Oh, no, sorry, that's a bit of an echo of Doug Ford pouring out the Crown Royal. You're hearing a little bit of the Premier in your ear. Go ahead, sorry about that.
All
Sachi.
right, okay.
Yeah.
So he can say the quiet part out loud. He can get away with, as has already been said, switching positions and often being the person who can say the unsayable. Mark Carney and no one in his cabinet can maybe express a desire to be a little bit more elbows up, but he can. But there's also the strategy here that he's playing a role as the Premier of Ontario, right? Because at the end of the day, we know from public opinion that there is a majority of Canadians who say, look, we actually don't necessarily care what the number on that tariff is. We just want the best possible deal done, whether that means concessions, especially in certain sectors. And what the best possible deal looks like to someone in British Columbia versus someone in Ontario versus someone in Quebec looks very, very different. Doug Ford is out there right now trying to be the guy who ensures that Ontario doesn't eat the turd sandwich. And he will have the backs of many Ontarians on that front. He's also sending that warning, I think, as we're discussing, to Mark Carney, the technocrat, from Doug Ford, the populist, saying, hey, look, you've gone to market. If you're going to go buy something, either buy the cow or buy the 5 magic beans, but don't come back with something worthless.
Okay, that sandwich pairs well with Crown Royal, by the way. Lisa Wright, former Conservative Cabinet Minister, has joined us. Lisa, look, there may be legitimate negotiating tactical reasons why they dropped the tariffs. The retaliatory tariffs apparently was an issue at the negotiating table with everything. I don't know. We're not in the room. It's tough to know. But clearly, Doug Ford doesn't like it. I mean, what's your thoughts on what the Premier of Ontario said today, expressing publicly some frustration there?
I think that's his only position he can take, quite frankly. He has to be the most cranky on this as anybody in Ontario. He has to be the one leading Ontarians saying, this can't happen, this is outrageous. Because if he doesn't do that, if he's not the cheerleader in chief when it comes to the injustice coming to Ontario, what's left for him when the real stuff starts happening to the economy? When people start pivoting towards the Premier and say, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? At least he staked his ground and said that I am outraged by all of this. I can't believe it's happening. These are the bad guys. These are the ones that are causing the problems. He's going to blame corporate Canada, or whether or not they're going to the United States. He's going to blame Mark Carney at some point in time. He's going to blame Mr. Trump all the time. But it's never going to be Ontario's problem. He is just, unfortunately, the one